Everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. I recently received an email from a safety consulting firm, and I happen to know the owner of this company. I respect the company and I respect the person tremendously. And this was kind of an e-marketing piece that I think went out, and it made an interesting argument. The statement I think that this argument was challenging was that safety is a cost control issue. And I can relate to that because going back in my career, safety was always viewed as a cost center, not a profit center. So I completely agree with what they're saying. And their point is that safety isn't necessarily a cost control issue. It's actually a cost control strategy, and they help companies to prove that. And some of the things they point out is that obviously work comp claims can drive up insurance premium. And we also know that incidents can drive up some of your other types of insurance premiums, not just workers' comp. We also know that incidents can slow down production, they can disrupt schedules, and that costs us money. Equipment damage, property damage, repairs, they can be very expensive. They can also slow production, and these can all be a result of incidents and accidents that occurred. And then there's the issue with overtime and retraining when people are out on workers' comp for some reason. And these are all issues that are caused by incidents and accidents that disrupt the workplace. And then finally, it seems that supervisors can spend so much of their time reacting to what's going on and not focusing on what really matters, which is safety, quality, and productivity. So, when I got this piece in email, I held on to it in my inbox for a while because it intrigued me and it allowed me to kind of think back. And they made a great business case, and then they identify where they add value and they can help companies kind of solve these problems. But when I go back on the journey through my career, I remember the stories that I heard going back before really I started. I got my first exposure working in safety in 1992. So it's been a long time. It's been over 30 years. But ultimately, I remember that safety was looked at as a cost center. It was not looked at as an opportunity to improve the bottom line. And oftentimes, safety people were told that if you disrupt production, you're out of here, you're fired. Safety people need to keep us safe, but you need to keep your head down and let us do what we do. And when I first got into the workplace and safety, to me, there was nothing more important. It's like, production can stop, production can wait. We're not going to hurt people. Safety is the most important thing. And I had a really good perspective because I came out of construction working in the field as a laborer, and I knew what the conditions were like. I knew what was expected of me. And I also knew that I was disposable. If something happened to me, I'm out of there. They'll find a replacement for me just like that. And that still exists in third world countries like Mexico. You get hurt, you lose your job, and it's sad. We've come a long ways in the United States from where we were then. And um I think that we've learned that safety needs to complement production. And to me, there's a three-legged stool. There's production, productivity, there's quality, and there's safety. And I think, and I've said this before, my feeling to how to solve this never-ending issue of safety versus production, and then lump in quality. Quality has to do with doing the job right, not making mistakes, avoiding rework. That's very expensive. And if I'm looking at construction, the cost of rework, the cost of quality can be up to 30% of the cost of a project, which is an incredible number when you really think about it. The cost of safety, even on an underperforming project, usually isn't that high, but it is substantial. It is significant. And I think that the approach that I've learned and taken is, how do we solve the the competition between all these different priorities? And I've always kind of felt very strongly that you got to start with values. And safety is either a true value in an organization or it's not, because values don't change. And I've seen organizations where safety is their number one value and they put it on the wall, but I've also seen them not practice that in principle and set the right example. And I actually worked for an organization, the first organization which I worked in safety. The message coming from the president of the company and the upper echelon was that we will not compromise anything if it's going to hurt our people. Then I saw what was going on in the field, and that wasn't, they didn't get the message, or that's not what was being practiced. Let's put it that way. So I think it really starts with that value. But the way to bring everybody together, in my opinion, the way to solve this issue is to focus heavily on planning your work, working your plan. We've heard that 100 times. And and I think where we really run into issues with quality and we run into issues with safety, which ultimately affect production, is a failure to plan, and then also the change management process. Something unexpected occurs, it's responded to, and it results in a problem. It results in rework, it results in an injury, whatever that may be. So to me, that's always been the foundation of building a successful safety program, a strategic approach to building safety into production and quality is through that planning process. I've seen some organizations that do it tremendously well, and they're very successful and very profitable because of it. And this is the argument where safety becomes a profit center. By reducing incidents, by reducing rework, that money goes right to the bottom line. You can look at workers' comp premium paid per hour worked. You can look at premiums for general liability, professional liability, umbrella, and those directly correlate with incidences, claims, property damage, you name it. And you look at a lot of other things, and safety can benefit those, reduce those. And by controlling cost, I'll argue that by controlling cost, they actually drive the bottom line. And I think the safety pros are learning how to tell that story and sell that story to the C-suite, to upper management. And I think upper management gets it because they do see the data on the cost of rework. They do see the data at the end of the year on work comp claim costs, at least the direct costs, maybe not the indirect cost of work comp claims. But ultimately, when we look at that, safety adds a lot of value. We know that. Those of us who work in the profession, you don't need to convince us. We know how important it really is. And I think that, the principle of doing it because it's the right thing to do, practicing safe work because it's the right thing to do for our people makes a lot of sense. But the cost justification, the economic argument, it's there. And ultimately planning work solves so many of those problems. And when companies learn to do that effectively, and they're not looking at what's in front of them right now, they're looking a week, 2 weeks down the road, they're way more successful. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that's thought provoking, and we'll see you all next Wednesday.